Welcome to episode 6 of The Acolyte. Before we begin, I do want to say that I'm having a 15% off sale until July 7th on TheorySabers.com. We just added 2 new sabers to your liking, so make sure to go check those out. So Osha wakes up in the den of Smilo Wren of Khmer. Either somehow May had enough time to transport her all the way to this hidden beach cave and then join Sol in the last episode all within just a few minutes, or Khmer himself took her there. I'm inclined to believe the latter. Sol tells a member of the Jedi that all of the Jedi have died. Now this further makes more of accomplices to hiding that the Jedi have indeed died, which means that this time of peace that Ki-Adi-Mundi says in episode 1 of 1,000 years is just becoming more and more broken.
Impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium.
Not only is Kelnaka, Torben, and Trinity who died, it's these other almost 10 Jedi Masters and Knights that we now have to worry about. Sol grieves the loss of his Jedi friends, and his acting is probably the only good thing about this show, especially when compared to May and Vernestra. He also doesn't notice Osha is actually now May, but the gopher, the tracker whose nose is apparently stronger than the Force, ends up eventually telling him, which we'll come to soon. That's right, the same guy who can read minds has a hard time understanding who's who. Khmer takes all of his clothes off to bathe in a pond, and when he senses Osha there, yeah, that's right, I said he takes all of his clothes off to bathe in a pond in Star Wars. He literally says, if you're not going to join me, can I put my clothes back on? As he gets out, the sexual tension rises, and she takes a good look. Hopefully the water wasn't cold. This is probably the most sexualized Star Wars show that we've seen, and I just really don't think that George would have written scenes like this at all. This isn't Game of Thrones, it's Star Wars, and there's no need for this kind of nudity or sexual tension in this galaxy. There's been a ton of unnecessary shirtless and nudity scenes that we just don't need. And it honestly takes me out because it's not something that's been done in Star Wars. If this was something that was a precedent, yeah, sure, whatever, it's no big deal. It's like Game of Thrones. We're expecting some weird stuff. But it's just not what George wrote. Khmer and Osha discuss the differences between master and pupil, and I feel like these scenes could have been really cool, but they just weren't written very well. I would have loved it if they went into more detail about the Sith or about the dark side or about the Force in general, but really it wasn't. He tries to show her that there's a different way than the Jedi have forced her to believe. Vernestra is informed that all the Jedi died, so now another person knows that all of the Jedi that she sent there are pretty much dead except for Sol, and she gets a little bit emotional, not in the sense where she's sad, but she's kind of losing her shit. This isn't really a Jedi thing to do, nor is it a Jedi Master thing to do, and the fact that she's surprised about this is kind of weird, as if it would never happen after sending Sol there to apprehend a Jedi killer and her master. Surprise, she continues to keep it hidden. Very Jedi thing to do, all for the show's existence, and we switch to Osha and Khmer heading to grab food in his cave. Seems like they're getting closer, and she's probably going to end up joining him. May finds Osha's droid, gets tackled by the otter tracker guy, who sniffs her out and recognizes her that she is an imposter. She is actually May and not Osha. She kicks him away, then resets the droid to factory settings because it's being difficult by holding down buttons like an iPhone, and it sets the color to red because, hey, now we know that it's serving the evil person. It now perfectly works for her and does as it's told. Wow, simple. Khmer talks about how emotions are what fuels powers and the Force. He gives his case, and it makes sense. The Jedi came to kill him, so he defended himself. But he also had sent out an apprentice to kill Jedi, so it's kind of not really seeing their point of view. We see Osha kind of turning the tide a little bit and empathizing with Khmer now. They have a tense moment together, and I honestly feel like they could start dating, or people are going to start shipping them, just like they did Rey and Kylo. She puts the lightsaber to his throat, and he tells her that her emotions make her powerful, and that when you lose everything, you become free. Vernestra gets tummy issues when she travels hyperspace, as we're told. Now, I didn't know Jedi have vulnerabilities like this, especially Jedi Masters. The more you know. Maybe the next scene will finally be a Jedi on the toilet. Gopher Guy has to eventually tell Sol about May's identity. This is the Jedi Master who could read minds. He could not figure it out himself. He needed the tracker's nose to actually rival the Force. So Sol finally stuns her after the Gopher tells him, and he blasts out of there into hyperspace after being told on the intercom to stay where he is and that help is coming. As Vernestra lands on the planet where the Jedi died, they eventually start walking around. When we switch to Khmer, who solders his helmet, which is made of kurtosis, meaning it's supposed to short out any plasma or electrical device, so it goes against what kurtosis actually does to be able to effectively seal his helmet with immense levels of plasma, kind of like a lightsaber. He tells Osha that he seeks the power of two, so essentially the rule of two, meaning he is a Sith, or some sort of a variant of a Knight of Ren or something. She notices lash scars on his back, and she says, "How did you get those scars?" He says, "How do you think?" She says, "Your Jedi Master." He says, "Someone who threw me away." So probably I'm thinking Vernestra was his master, and this is what a lot of people in the chat were saying during the live stream, as she has a light whip, lightsaber, and those look like lashes from a light whip. Her lightsaber is purple, meaning she has dark side tendencies, blue and red to make purple, so she probably isn't too great at handling her emotions and has some issues of herself to resolve. The Jedi walk through the battlefield and they notice all of the dead Jedi. The very masculine Jedi, which was great to finally see a very masculine looking Jedi there, has some psychometry and he can sense what happened here. I think Vernestra knows it's her former apprentice Kimir and she prepares to give those bodies a proper burial. They try to blame it on Sol, but it doesn't really stick. Something you'd think Sol would do, but I guess he had no time. May is tied up and has to now listen to Sol tell his story. We'll probably get a flashback in the next episode, and it'll probably be back to the witches when one of the witches mind-controlled Torben or something like that, and that's why we see in the trailer Kelnaka trying to fight him. Osha puts on the helmet, and we get a Darth Vader moment, much like Anakin did in episode 3, and done. She has a hard time breathing. She's hyperventilating in there. She can't see anything, so she has to rely on the Force. So she's probably going to harness her true powers of the Force finally and be very unstoppable. Maybe as she has it on, the Jedi come in and they think that she is the one that killed everyone, so then she's going to have to fight them all, and then she'll have to kill them, and Kimir will team up with her, and they'll all kill the Jedi. And she's like, "No, wait, I'm trying to tell you that it's not," but it'll be too late. She'll have to defend herself, and she'll probably just trust in the Force, and they'll probably just team up and kill everybody. The master who abandoned her student, Vernestra, and Kimir will fight, and maybe Vernestra is about to kill Kimir, and Osha gets some feelings and ends up killing her. I could see something like that happening. This episode, not much happened. I felt like the funny moments that they interjected with May getting the oil spewed on her eye and her screaming out in a comedic way, again, just reminded me of The Last Jedi. And then the tummy issues joke about Vernestra was just unnecessary and really just humanizes the Jedi, which you don't really want to think of them as humans. They're supposed to be larger than life. So, them going to the bathroom or them having needs like eating, for example, except for Anakin and Padme, which was more of a romantic setting, you don't really see all that much. You don't see Jedi taking a pee break. They're supposed to be much larger than life, and that's how George depicted them. So them getting nausea or tummy aches because they're getting motion sickness is just not a thing that exists in this world, nor should it. But hey, neither should Ki-Adi-Mundi in this timeline, and neither should he know that Jedi are dying in this 1,000 years of peace. We'll see what they want to throw at us next week in episode 7. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Leave a like on the video, and I will see you all in the next video. Until then, remember, the Force will be with you always.